Imagine a world where statues as tall as 10-story buildings watched over the coastline, and deserts held monuments that seemed to defy the weight of the earth itself. 2,000 years ago, ancient writers began to name the most astonishing creations they had ever heard of, calling them the wonders of the world. They were more than monuments. They were declarations of wealth, faith, power, and genius, built by hands that believed stone could carry memory into eternity. Today we know their images from books, paintings, and films, yet the truth is far more haunting. Nearly all of them are gone. Of the 7 legendary wonders, only the pyramids of Egypt still stand. The others have vanished into dust, into scattered stones beneath the sea, or into the hidden foundations of ordinary homes. Where did these wonders disappear, and why could even humanity's greatest creations not survive? To understand their disappearance, we must look beyond ruins and dates. We must examine how time, disaster, war, and human indifference slowly erased what ancient people once believed could never be destroyed. In the ancient world, there was no concrete, no steel framework, no electricity, and no modern machinery. Every great structure was an act of courage and imagination. Marble had to be cut from the earth, gold transported across dangerous distances, and massive stones lifted by muscle, rope, and belief. These monuments rose from civilizations that seemed unstoppable. But when empires weakened, their sacred symbols became vulnerable. Their endings were never simple. Some fell to earthquakes, some to fire, some to conquest, and some to the quiet hunger of later generations who saw holy stone as nothing more than building material. One of these stories begins with war, and with a victory so extraordinary that it inspired a monument to the gods. In 305 BC, the army of General Demetrius, known as the Besieger, marched against the island city of Rhodes. He brought with him the most advanced siege machines of the age, including the Helepolis, whose name meant the taker of cities. It was a massive wheeled tower, armored with iron and armed with powerful catapults. For a full year, the people of Rhodes resisted. When Demetrius finally withdrew, he left his machines behind on the coast. The Rhodians chose not to preserve these instruments of war. Instead, they sold them and used the money to commission a statue of Helios, the sun god. At first, the plan was modest, but ambition grew. They wanted a figure twice as tall as first imagined, not realizing that doubling its height would demand 8 times the material. Construction began in 292 BC and continued for 12 years. To raise such enormous pieces into place, Chares used a method as strange as it was brilliant. Workers built a vast earthen ramp around the statue, raising the ground higher and higher as the monument grew. For years, the giant remained hidden inside the mound, as if the earth itself were giving birth to a god. When the final work was complete and the soil was cleared away, the people of Rhodes saw what their ambition had created. Before them stood a bronze figure of Helios, 108 feet tall, rising on a white marble pedestal near the entrance to the harbor. Inside, it was strengthened with iron beams and stone blocks, while bronze plates formed the shining outer skin. In the sunlight, the statue must have seemed almost alive, a blazing guardian visible to sailors far out at sea. But the life of the giant was brief. In 226 BC, a powerful earthquake struck Rhodes. The shock was violent enough to break the iron supports within the statue's legs. The Colossus cracked at the knees and crashed to the ground, crushing nearby buildings beneath its fallen body. What had been built to proclaim strength revealed a deeper truth. Even the mightiest forms can be betrayed by hidden weakness. For nearly 800 years, the broken giant lay along the coast, becoming a wonder even in ruin. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder claimed that only a few men could wrap their arms around one of its thumbs. But the final disappearance came in 653 AD, when Arab forces under General Muawiyah took the island. To the new rulers, the fallen god was no longer sacred. It was metal. It was value. It was something to be cut apart. The bronze body was broken into pieces and carried away, reportedly requiring 900 camels to transport it. Sold to a merchant, the remains were likely melted into coins, tools, or weapons. Today, no confirmed fragment of the Colossus survives. Only memory remains, and a few later landmarks near the harbor where people imagine the giant once stood. If the Colossus of Rhodes was born from victory, the Lighthouse of Alexandria was born from necessity, vision, and the dangerous beauty of the sea. Built on the island of Pharos around 285 BC by order of Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's closest generals, it became one of the supreme engineering achievements of the ancient world. The project was led by Sostratus of Cnidus. According to legend, he was forbidden to place his own name on the tower, since glory belonged to the king. So he carved his dedication into stone, covered it with plaster, and placed the king's name over it. Years later, the sea winds wore the plaster away, revealing the hidden name of the true creator. Rising more than 390 feet above the harbor, the lighthouse stood among the tallest structures on Earth, guiding sailors through darkness with a flame that seemed to challenge the night itself. The lower level of the Lighthouse of Alexandria was square, massive, and practical. It housed workers, soldiers, and the supplies needed to keep the tower alive. Above it rose an 8-sided middle section, richly decorated with bronze statues that must have caught the Mediterranean light like silent guardians. At the summit stood a cylindrical chamber, and there, every night, a great fire was lit against the darkness. To make that flame visible from nearly 30 miles away, the Greeks relied on an advanced system of enormous polished bronze mirrors. These mirrors gathered and directed the light far out across the sea, turning the tower into a kind of ancient beacon of intelligence and will. By day, when flame alone was not enough, a thick column of smoke rose from the summit, guiding merchant ships toward Alexandria, one of the richest and most powerful cities of the ancient world. Keeping the lighthouse alive demanded constant labor. Tons of dry wood had to be carried upward through a wide spiral ramp inside the tower. Pack animals climbed slowly through its interior, bringing fuel to the flame that protected sailors from hidden rocks, storms, and the unforgiving edge of the coast. It was not merely a monument. It was a machine of survival. For centuries, the lighthouse endured what kingdoms could not. It outlived the Ptolemaic dynasty, watched Roman legions take Egypt, and later stood through the Arab conquest. But even the strongest works of human hands are never beyond time. The sea air, earthquakes, and the slow weakening of its foundations began to wound what once seemed indestructible. The first great disaster came in 796 AD, when a powerful earthquake destroyed the upper part of the tower and shattered its remarkable lighting system. From that moment, the lighthouse no longer fulfilled its original purpose. It became a watchtower, a wounded remnant of a greater age. Later, Arab rulers attempted to adapt the structure, reportedly placing a mosque dome where the signal fire had once burned. Around this period, a strange legend emerged. It was said that a Byzantine spy convinced the caliph that treasures of Alexander the Great were hidden beneath the lighthouse. The caliph ordered demolition, and workers removed the famous mirrors and damaged the upper floors before the deception was discovered. Whether legend or truth, the tower did decline after human interference weakened its structure. Then nature delivered the final sentence. Earthquakes in 1303 and 1323 reduced the ancient wonder to a shapeless mass of stone. When Ibn Battuta reached Alexandria in 1349, he found the tower so ruined that it could no longer be entered. The light that had once conquered the darkness had finally been swallowed by it. Huge blocks of white marble lay scattered along the shore and beneath the water, their edges slowly sinking into the muddy floor of Alexandria Bay. In 1477, Sultan Qaitbay recognized the power of that location. It guarded the entrance to the city, and in an age of invasion, memory gave way to defense. He ordered a fortress built upon the surviving foundations of the ancient lighthouse, and that fortress still stands today. To save time and resources, workers reused stones from the fallen wonder. The Lighthouse of Alexandria did not simply disappear. It was absorbed. Its broken body became part of the thick walls of a medieval stronghold, as if one civilization had buried another inside its own need for survival. Then, in 1994, French archaeologists and divers uncovered hundreds of fragments beneath Alexandria Bay. They found pieces of ancient statues and massive stone blocks, some weighing up to 70 tons. These were believed to be authentic remains of the lighthouse, either thrown into the sea during the construction of the fortress or pulled down by the earthquakes that had shattered the tower centuries earlier. After so long, the sea returned a few pieces of what it had taken. But while the Lighthouse of Alexandria and the Colossus of Rhodes were physical wonders whose remains can still be traced, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon stand in a far more uncertain place. They are perhaps the most mysterious of all the ancient wonders, because scholars still debate whether they truly existed or whether they were a beautiful invention preserved by ancient writers. According to the best-known legend, the gardens were built in the 6th century BC by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II. He created them for his wife, Amytis, who came from a mountainous homeland. In the heat and dust of Babylon, she longed for cool forests, rising hills, and the fragrance of flowers. So the king set out to give her an artificial mountain in the middle of a flat and sun-burned plain. If the descriptions are true, the construction was astonishing for its age. The gardens rose in 4 great tiers, connected by wide stairways paved with white and pink stone. Each level rested on stone slabs, reeds, asphalt, and layers of brick. Lead plates were placed above them to keep irrigation water from leaking downward and weakening the pillars. Only then was fertile soil added, deep enough for great trees to take root. From a distance, the green terraces seemed to hang in the air, which gave the gardens their legendary name. Yet their greatest secret was water. Babylon stood in a dry region, and such trees would have needed vast amounts every day. Ancient engineers supposedly built a hidden system inside the pillars, using wheels and leather buckets to raise water from the Euphrates to the highest level. From there, it flowed downward through streams and waterfalls, cooling the air and turning stone into paradise. Interestingly, the name of the gardens became linked to Semiramis, the legendary Assyrian queen who lived centuries before Nebuchadnezzar. It is possible that Greek historians confused names, blended different traditions, or preserved only a distant echo of a much older story. Even in ancient memory, the gardens seem to belong half to history and half to dream. Their golden age may have lasted nearly 200 years, until Alexander the Great entered Babylon in 331 BC. The conqueror was captivated by the city's beauty and made it the center of his empire. According to tradition, it was beneath the shade of the hanging gardens that Alexander spent his final days, surrounded by silence, rare plants, and the fading fragrance of distant lands. For a man who had conquered kingdoms, perhaps the final mystery was not power, but stillness. After Alexander's death, the decline began. Babylon slowly lost its political importance, and the delicate system that kept the gardens alive began to fail. Without the constant lifting of water from the Euphrates, the trees withered beneath the merciless sun. Their roots, once binding the soil together, died away. The terraces weakened, the earth crumbled, and floods, common to the region, slowly attacked the foundations. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt, built from immense stone blocks, Babylonian structures were made largely from clay brick. Without constant maintenance, such materials returned quickly to the earth. By the 1st century AD, little may have remained. When the Roman geographer Strabo described the site, he spoke only of traces, broken arches, and empty stairways. Later, the desert covered what time had not already erased. In the 20th century, archaeologist Robert Koldewey excavated Babylon and uncovered an unusual foundation, a deep well, and a complex network of channels. He believed he had found the legendary gardens. But modern scholars remain divided. Some argue that the true gardens may have stood not in Babylon, but in Nineveh, created by the Assyrian king Sennacherib. This would explain why Babylon itself has yielded no clear royal inscription describing such a magnificent project. Whatever the truth, the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis have vanished completely. No wall, beam, or living root remains with certainty. Only dusty excavations in the Iraqi desert, disputed theories, and a legend of love endure. Perhaps that is why this wonder still haunts us. It was humanity's attempt to command nature and build paradise by force. But when the machine stopped and the city was abandoned, nature reclaimed what had always belonged to it. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus was different. It was not merely a place of worship, but a sacred world unto itself, a miniature city of wealth, devotion, and power, remembered as one of the greatest architectural achievements of the Greek world. Its history was marked by rise, destruction, and rebirth, as if the temple itself were trapped in a cycle familiar to civilizations: glory, ruin, and the desperate desire to begin again. The largest and most famous version began around 550 BC, funded by King Croesus of Lydia, a ruler whose name became a symbol of almost unimaginable wealth. Under his patronage, the architects Chersiphron and his son Metagenes faced a problem that was both practical and ominous. Ephesus stood in a region shaken by earthquakes, where stone could betray its builders without warning. To resist the violence beneath the ground, they chose an unexpected foundation, a low, swampy area near a river. The soft earth, they believed, would absorb the tremors like a cushion. Workers dug a vast pit and filled it with layers of charcoal and sheep's wool, creating a strange but ingenious base for the marble above. Upon this foundation, they raised a temple of astonishing scale. The completed sanctuary was immense. 127 marble columns, each nearly 60 feet high, supported the roof. Within its sacred halls stood works by some of the finest sculptors and artists of the age. But the Temple of Artemis was more than a place of prayer. It was a bank, a refuge, and a sanctuary where people could seek protection from the violence of the outside world. For nearly 200 years, it stood as a living center of faith and power. Then came the night of July 21, 356 BC. A man named Herostratus, driven by a hunger for eternal fame, entered the temple and set fire to its wooden beams. In only a few hours, what had taken generations to create was consumed from within. The heat cracked the marble, shattered the sacred space, and reduced one of the greatest works of the Greek world to ruins. Legend says that on that same night, far away in Macedonia, Alexander the Great was born. The people of Ephesus punished Herostratus and tried to erase his name from memory. Yet their effort failed. His name survived as a symbol of meaningless destruction, a warning that human vanity can sometimes be more dangerous than time itself. Years later, Alexander offered to pay for the temple's reconstruction, but only if his name appeared on it. The Ephesian leaders refused with elegance, saying it was not proper for one god to build a temple for another. In 323 BC, the temple was restored with public funds, greater than before. It survived the Roman conquest, but not the slow transformation of the world. Its decline deepened with the rise of Christianity, and in 263 AD, Goth tribes attacked Ephesus, striking another wound into a sacred place already surrounded by the shadows of a fading age. The temple's treasures were lost during the invasion, and the structure itself was badly damaged. Yet its final defeat did not come from fire or raiders, but from a change in belief. In 391 AD, Emperor Theodosius I issued a decree banning pagan worship. The Temple of Artemis was officially closed, and what had once been sacred became a quarry. The people of Ephesus no longer looked upon it as a dwelling place of the divine. Marble slabs were taken away for new buildings, some reportedly transported to Constantinople, while other fragments were burned into lime for ordinary use. A wonder that had once held prayers, wealth, and refuge was slowly consumed by daily necessity. In time, the swamp that had once protected the temple became its grave. River, silt, and sediment covered the foundations, and the ruins sank beneath the earth. By the 19th century, the site of one of the world's greatest sanctuaries had become little more than a muddy depression. Only in 1869, after years of searching, did British archaeologist John Turtle Wood uncover the temple's foundations nearly 20 feet below the surface. Today, a single reconstructed column stands in that lonely valley. A heron's nest rests at its top, a quiet and almost sorrowful symbol of nature, reclaiming the place where marble, gold, and devotion once dazzled the ancient world. But not every wonder was built for a god. Some were built for grief, memory, and the dangerous human longing to escape death. In 353 BC, King Mausolus died in Halicarnassus. During his lifetime, he had already begun planning a tomb unlike any other, a monument meant to surpass the beauty of temples. After his death, the work was continued by his widow, Queen Artemisia, who, according to legend, devoted herself entirely to preserving his memory. The finest Greek masters of the age were summoned to create the tomb. Its design was unlike anything the world had seen, combining several architectural traditions into one commanding form. The mausoleum rose about 148 feet high. At its base stood a massive marble platform. Above it, a temple-like structure with 36 columns, and above that, a stepped pyramid reaching upward toward the sky. At the summit stood a marble chariot drawn by 4 horses, carrying statues of Mausolus and Artemisia. To those who saw it, the monument must have seemed less like a tomb than a statement against oblivion. Its white marble, sculpted figures, and stone lions gave it a presence both royal and mournful. So powerful was its legacy that Mausolus gave his name to all great tombs that came after, the mausoleum. Unlike many ancient wonders, it endured for nearly 1,000 years, surviving empires, wars, and the campaigns of Alexander the Great. But in the 10th century, powerful earthquakes shattered its columns, and collapsed its upper structure. For nearly 200 years, the broken monument lay in silence. Then, in 1404, the Knights of Street, John arrived. Needing stone to strengthen their fortress against the Turkish army, they turned to the ruins. To them, the mausoleum was no longer a king's attempt at eternity. It was simply free building material. Elements of the ancient structure were gradually recycled into new walls, new fortifications, and new purposes. A later story tells of knights discovering a hidden chamber within the ruins, where a magnificent sarcophagus still rested in darkness. But when they returned the next morning, the chamber had been plundered, as if even the dead king could not escape the greed of the living. By the 19th century, little remained at the site except a deep hollow where the tomb had once stood. Today, fragments of the great chariot and sculpted figures are preserved in the British Museum, while in Halicarnassus itself, only an empty space and broken columns mark the place where Mausolus tried to defeat oblivion. His monument gave the world a word, but not even that word could save the stone. Unlike the other wonders, the statue of Zeus was not built beneath the open sky. It lived inside a temple, hidden in sacred shadow, waiting for pilgrims who came to Olympia seeking the presence of the supreme Greek god. In 435 BC, the sculptor Phidias completed a work meant not simply to represent Zeus, but to make human beings feel they had entered the presence of divine authority itself. Zeus sat upon a massive cedar throne decorated with precious stones. The statue rose nearly 50 feet high, so enormous that ancient observers believed if the god stood, he would break through the roof of the temple. Phidias used the chryselephantine technique, building a wooden core and covering the visible skin with ivory panels, while the robes and sandals were formed from pure gold. The effect was overwhelming. Zeus seemed alive. His eyes were made from precious stones, and a golden wreath of olive branches crowned his head. In one hand he held Nike, the goddess of victory. In the other, he held a scepter topped with an eagle. To the pilgrims entering the temple, this was not merely sculpture. It was power made visible. When Phidias was asked whether he had seen Zeus before creating the statue, he reportedly answered that he had followed the descriptions in Homer. Another legend says that after completing the work, he asked the god for approval. At that moment, lightning struck the temple's black marble floor, yet the statue remained untouched. To preserve the ivory, priests regularly treated it with olive oil. A shallow pool of oil was placed before the throne, protecting the material and reflecting light from the entrance. This created the illusion of a radiant glow rising around Zeus, as though the god himself were breathing light into the room. For nearly 800 years, Olympian Zeus remained one of the ancient world's most sacred images. Even the Roman Emperor Caligula, infamous for his madness, supposedly tried to take it to Rome and replace the god's face with his own. But legend claims that when workers approached, the statue released a terrible laugh, collapsing the scaffolding and sending the frightened men fleeing from the temple. That greatness ended when the world itself began to change. In 391 AD, Emperor Theodosius banned pagan worship and brought the ancient Olympic Games to an end. The temple of Zeus was abandoned, and its sacred treasures, once protected by devotion, became easy prey for looters and officials of a new age. Around 416 AD, an attempt was reportedly made to save the statue from complete destruction. It was dismantled and carried to Constantinople, where it entered the private collection of a wealthy official named Lausus. There, among other masterpieces taken from the Old World, the image of Zeus survived for several more decades, no longer worshipped, but preserved as a relic of vanished belief. Then came the final tragedy. In 475 AD, a great fire swept through Constantinople, destroying entire sections of the city. The palace that held the ancient masterpieces burned, and the statue of Zeus was consumed with it. Its wooden frame would have caught fire quickly. The gold melted, the ivory cracked and blackened, and the face that had once filled pilgrims with awe disappeared into smoke. Of one of the most magnificent works ever created, nothing remains but written descriptions, scattered memories, and images stamped on ancient coins. Even the temple at Olympia, where Zeus had once sat in silent majesty, was later ruined by powerful earthquakes in the 6th century. Today, only broken columns mark the place where the god once seemed to dwell. Nearby, archaeologists uncovered the workshop of Phidias, the human space behind the divine illusion. It is a quiet reminder that even the most sacred visions are shaped by mortal hands, and that every civilization, no matter how confident in its gods, eventually leaves behind fragments for the future to question. The 7 ancient wonders were never merely monuments. They were humanity's attempt to speak to eternity. The Colossus of Rhodes rose as a bronze declaration of victory. The Lighthouse of Alexandria challenged the darkness of the sea. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon tried to turn dust into paradise. The Temple of Artemis, the Mausoleum of Mausolus, and the statue of Zeus were built from faith, grief, power, and devotion. And the Egyptian pyramids, the only survivors, still stand like silent witnesses before the long collapse of human confidence. Yet, the lesson of these wonders is not only that great things disappear, it is that civilizations often mistake outer splendor for inner strength. These monuments were built so people would believe that stone, bronze, gold, marble, and engineering could preserve glory forever. But in the end, the bronze statue was melted down. The lighthouse sank into the sea. The garden dissolved into dust. The temple became building material. The mausoleum was taken apart to strengthen a fortress. The sacred idol burned. What once seemed eternal became fragments, rumors, and shadows beneath the earth. Today, we are building our own wonders. Skyscrapers rise into the clouds. Artificial intelligence reshapes the world. Money, technology, and power move faster than any empire of the ancient past could have imagined. But the deeper question remains: are we becoming nobler? Are we living with more kindness? Do we cherish life, nature, and morality more than those who came before us? Or are we only building higher while becoming emptier within? The lost wonders remind us that material things cannot save a civilization if morality has declined. True progress is not only construction on the outside, but cultivation on the inside. Human beings must return to truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance, learn to respect the universe, and live according to higher laws. Otherwise, everything we take pride in today may one day become ruins for future generations to uncover and quietly mourn. If this journey through the lost wonders has stirred something in you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe history still has deeper lessons to reveal, subscribe to the channel and continue walking with us through the mysteries time has left behind.